Hi for Nye, and welcome to the Graticast interview with Sue Waddle, the Vice Chair of ME Research UK and co-founder of Invest in ME. This interview was the kind of interview where, you know how you maybe buy a new phone or a new car or a new laptop, and after playing the first few games of Candy Crush Saga, you go to make a call and then realize you can't actually find where the call button is. Or maybe you drive your car all the way home and then go to slip it into reverse and accidentally put it into sixth and slowly crunch your neighbor's car. Or maybe you open up your new laptop and you're wondering where on earth the start button is. Well, that's kind of the problem that we had with this interview. The very morning of the interview, we got a new piece of software that would allow us to record the interview in high definition. So Sue and I looked great. Unfortunately, this same new piece of software didn't know how to access our microphone, which meant that the first half hour of the interview was broadcast in complete silence. Thank you to all those of you who let us know about this before you all disappeared. Fortunately, Sue was very happy to hang around to give the interview a second try. And in fact, not only was she hospitable enough to do so, but she found the second interview gave her the opportunity to give even more in-depth answers. In fact, many of the questions that you guys had asked before the interview were answered the second time in the interview itself. So she was able to give an interview that she herself felt much happier about. Not only that, but Sue said that if you have any questions that arise from this interview, then please do post them on the Graticast social media and she will do her best to respond. More importantly though, if you are a researcher who is excited by the prospect of tackling the challenge of ME, then please do contact ME Research UK with your ideas by following the links to their website on this page. And don't forget that you can support charities like ME Research UK and Invest in ME simply by subscribing to this Graticast. It's completely free, but by doing so, you will help us to raise advertising revenue, which gets passed on to charities who are funding biomedical research into this despicable and debilitating disease. But right now, please sit back and listen to this interview with Sue as she explains a little bit more about ME and the biomedical research that's being done to combat it. Another live Graticast, for which we are incredibly grateful to the hospitality of Sue Waddle here and her husband Nigel, who've let us into their home in order to, chat a little bit about ME Research UK, the organisation for which Sue is the vice chair of, which I discovered it does not mean that she's responsible for the black market dealings of ME Research UK or any of their arms trading or anything. Actually means something quite different. So do you want to tell us what that is, Sue?
Yes, thank you. I try to represent ME Research UK at various meetings. I try to raise the profile of ME and try to attract people into ME Research UK to support us, to donate money for research. I meet with researchers and I generally try to push forward the positive value of doing research into ME.
Fantastic. Well, can we start by asking you why you got involved with this in the first place?
Yes, I have a daughter who's been ill for 17 years now. She's very severely affected by this illness. To begin with, I thought that we were very much alone and that there weren't many people out there with this condition. But I quickly learnt that there were thousands, not even tens of thousands, there are hundreds of thousands of people just in this country affected by this illness to one degree or another. Then I decided to get involved and try to do something about this illness. It seemed to me that not enough was being done. Before my daughter became ill, I'd never heard of ME. So it was a few years before I got to grips with the fact that my daughter was affected by this illness, what this illness was. And I got more and more indignant about the fact that nothing was happening. So I actually started a charity with another lady called Invest in ME. Then I decided that I wanted to concentrate on research into ME, and I joined ME Research UK. I now represent them, as I say, trying to push the agenda forward.
Push the agenda forward to who? Is that?
Well, to all sorts of people. We need to encourage more researchers. We need to educate doctors. We need to educate politicians. We need to educate the general public. A lot of people with ME are misunderstood by their doctors, the public, and even by their family, sadly, in some cases.
Yeah.
People just don't understand this illness.
Well, certainly, Graticasters who've been watching us from the start will know that the reason this whole thing started is because I had a friend whose diagnosis of ME, well, it was a very long time coming, and for the first couple of years, a lot of people thought that she was making it up just to get out of her exams or something. Is that something that you're familiar with?
Very much so. I mean, it happened to us with my daughter, but it's a story that I hear time and time again. The first doctor that we were involved with was very dismissive and wouldn't diagnose her with anything. I guess eventually she would have agreed that she could have tried harder and should try harder.
And this was just through constantly telling her she should try harder.
She should go to school. She should try. And the implication in what she was saying was that she didn't believe that she was physically ill, and that she could maybe make herself better if she just applied a little bit more self-discipline or pushed herself, and that was patently untrue.
Well, I suppose that's the problem of fatigue being one of the symptoms of ME, but it's not the sole part of the condition. It is a symptom. It's not the whole of the
no, and
disease,
in fact, Chip, it's a very small part, because the way that I try to explain it to people is that if you had a brain tumour, you wouldn't say you had a chronic headache syndrome.
No.
And so this ME is nothing like it's nothing like just a fatigue state. It is very much there's pain involved. Every system of the body is involved: the autonomic nervous system, the digestive system, the cardiovascular system. Absolutely everything is involved and affected by this illness to one degree or another. It varies from person to person, but it's a very severely debilitating illness.
Can you give us an example of how debilitating it can be? Like what sort of effects does it have on, say, the digestive system or the immune system or anything else physical?
Well, I think from people that I've observed, and obviously my daughter's one of them, when they're very severely affected, some people can't bear light or sound. Their sensory organs are affected. Some people have to be tube fed. Thank goodness that's never happened to my daughter. Most people aren't affected to quite that degree, but that symptoms cause life-changing problems. So, for instance, my daughter can't walk for more than a few yards. So she's been in a wheelchair to go out anywhere since she was 15 or 16. Pain, headaches, cognitive problems, so not being able to think clearly. So quite often people with ME won't be able to hold a conversation the way that they would like.
Hearing you say all of this does leave a layman like me with an obvious question, which is if all of this is tied up with ME, why on earth does it take so long to get a diagnosis?
I think generally GPs are very poorly trained and don't necessarily know what to look for. There are many problems. I mean, one of the problems is that GPs don't have long enough to spend with patients to diagnose them. In a 10-minute appointment, it's very difficult to get through all of these symptoms, get across just how debilitated you are. We haven't got a specific diagnostic criteria. Right. And that doesn't help either. So it's actually it's usually diagnosis by exclusion. So other illnesses are excluded, such as cancer.
So it is almost like an episode of House in a way, that they have to go through everything else before they finally. But that again kind of surprises me a bit, because when researching what ME stood for, which I already know you can say much better than I can.
Myalgic encephalomyelitis.
Encephalomyelitis.
Yes.
A phrase which has something to do with the brain and nervous system.
And inflammation.
And inflammation.
Yes.
So, I guess why can't we just go to straight to that region as a diagnostic tool and say, just check if people have this as soon as we see some signs or symptoms that they might have it.
Yes, I think really the only real research that's been done on brains and spines has been done after death at autopsy, and inflammation has been found. So obviously you can't diagnose live people that way.
I suppose that would be quite difficult.
But it's a valid question, because there are other systems that indicate that there is inflammation. Some of our researchers in Dundee have found evidence of inflammation in the vascular system. So the cardiovascular system obviously affects the brain. But it's a question of when these studies are completed, they then have to be replicated, reproduced. They have to be tested again and again, and whether one of those, if that were to happen, whether one of those could ever make it to being a diagnostic tool or not, we don't know, but we would need to do more studies.
Just going back to something you said earlier, you said that there are hundreds of thousands of people who suffer from this, and we actually looked at the statistics in an earlier Graticast episode that it's something like 2.5 times the amount of people in this country who suffer from AIDS.
Yes.
It makes me wonder, why is no one taking notice of it? Is there any other reason that you can think of why this hasn't been pushed more on like a government medical agenda? Or
it's a good question, because I've been badgering in various guises and in various forums, been badgering the government for many years, and they always say that they take it very seriously, but actually nothing much ever changes. I think it's a chicken and egg situation, in that it's not a sexy subject like HIV/AIDS, where famous people were affected and their friends all rallied round to help. I was looking at some statistics actually, and in 1991, I think, so over 20 years ago, there was ring-fenced money given to HIV/AIDS in this country of £152 million. Well, over the 13 years that ME research has been going, we're very proud to say that we funded £1 million worth of research. But when you compare that to what was ring-fenced in 1 year for HIV/AIDS, that's a disgrace that more money isn't being put into this. And if money was put in, researchers would follow. In fact, there's a doctor in the United States who treats people with ME. She also treats HIV/AIDS patients, and she has said that if she had to have one or the other, she would choose HIV/AIDS, because the treatment is so good that you can live a relatively normal life, whereas the most severely affected ME patients have virtually no life at all. They're bedbound and housebound. So that's a salutary thought.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, the research that's being done into HIV and AIDS is very important.
It is.
We can't say anything bad about that.
No.
But your daughter's severe ME seemed to follow on from an episode of glandular fever.
That's right.
And I think you said something about how that the viral infection may have sort of prompted the ME, as if. And did you say that this was something that was quite common?
Yes, I mean, what we know is that the majority of people with ME report a viral onset, something like glandular fever, the flu. And then for some reason they get worse, they don't get better.
It could be quite easy for anyone to get.
Very much so. It could be anybody out there.
Yeah, I mean, at least with HIV and AIDS, we know of ways we can protect ourselves from that. Whereas with ME, it sounds like the film The Grudge. You can step into that house without knowing what the curse is, and you
Yes.
can come away.
Well, I think one of the most frightening aspects of this, and one that is underreported, is that ME is the single most serious cause of school absence, long-term school absence
Really?
in Britain. Yes, not a lot of people know that, but they should, because it affects so many young people. The government just do not want to tackle this head on.
Well, clearly, ME Research UK is tackling
Yes, we're doing what we can. Yeah.
What sort of things have you been doing? What sort of things have you been looking into?
Well, we fund research not just in the UK but abroad as well. So we are funding research, and have been funding over the years, research in Belgium with Professor Jordan Nice, and he's looking at the effects of exercise on people with ME. Maybe that would lead to a diagnostic tool at some point. We don't know. But for me personally, I think the most exciting research is being undertaken at Newcastle, solely because the research team there, headed up by Professor Julia Newton, has such dynamic young researchers who are looking at many different facets of the illness, and they're sharing their work with each other, and one thing leads to another.
One sort of alarm bell, I suppose, that rang a little bit when you mentioned the Belgian work there is, I mean, you must be familiar with Karina Henson and that story that's been going on in Denmark.
Yes, dreadful.
And another of that story is that some researchers who believe that ME has a psychosomatic cause have taken Karina away from her family and her parents, and have put her in an institution.
Yes.
And one of the therapies that they give is exercise as well. They think that this is helpful for ME, even though previous studies have suggested that it makes it worse.
Yes.
So how can you be sure that your Belgian study is, I suppose, not going down the same line? And
it's easy to see why that might be confusing. He's definitely not advocating exercise as a treatment for ME. He's looking at the effects of exercise and to see if these effects can be used perhaps as a diagnostic tool in future. In the case of the young girl in Denmark, I just have every sympathy with her parents on a personal level, because that's why I didn't get involved in advocacy before my daughter turned 16, because I was told by the paediatrician who eventually diagnosed her that we should keep a low profile, because if we started to make a lot of noise and ask a lot of questions before that, we might end up in a situation that Karina Hanson's parents have found themselves in, with our daughter taken away from us. And I've got friends who have had their adult children taken away from them with tragic consequences. So I fully appreciate that, and in no way does ME Research UK think that exercise is a good thing for people with ME. One of the things that I'm most excited about, we've recently funded a study that is sending somebody out to the homes of severely affected patients, because quite often people who are very severely affected can't access medical help or support, can't get to doctors' appointments, and doctors are increasingly reluctant to visit at home. So it's a small start, but it is a start, because there are thousands of people out there who are so severely affected. The 25% ME group represents what they say is the 25% of people with severe ME. If you take it that there are 250,000 people in this country with ME, 25% of that is an enormous number of people to be ignored. And they have been ignored.
Hopefully, a few more people wanting to, or being inspired by this, wanting to see something happen. So how would they get started? Sort of approaching you guys for research, or putting a project together?
I would ring our Director of Operations, Dr. Neil Abbott, at ME Research UK, or go online, because we have a very simple to complete form for researchers, and we are looking for good research to fund. We're always wanting to encourage new researchers. And if I was a scientist or a doctor, what I really don't understand is how people can't be interested or excited by this illness. It's just such a challenge, just such a puzzle.
Yeah, it sounds it, and it's affecting so many people. And I mean, maybe this is one of the reasons why the Karina Henson case is so, or the psychosomatic researchers out there are so supported by their government.
Yes.
Is because, they're saying, oh, we're researching into a disease that not many other people are making so much headway with.
Maybe.
And so they're getting the support of their politicians. But
yes. Well, it must be quite seductive for politicians to be told that with a little bit of talking therapy, people will get better.
Well, yes.
Because a little bit of talking therapy is fairly straightforward to deliver and fairly cheap.
We all know that politicians really do believe in the power of the spoken word, don't
we?
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah. There is one question that repeatedly kept coming up on Facebook, which I know a lot of people are going to be interested in, and that is about the ME collaborative, or the research collaborative.
Yes.
I think a lot of people see that the collaboration includes, it includes those who think of ME as having this psychosomatic beginning and this psychosomatic cure, and a lot of people like those Danish researchers, and like some UK researchers as well, who have been involved with some controversial cases, are also part of the collaborative. ME Research UK is as well. Are you able to sort of let people know why? Why are you involved in this very controversial grouping of...
Right. We did think long and hard before we decided to join the collaborative. But I'll tell you why we eventually did, and that's the person that mooted the collaborative in the first place is a Professor Stephen Holgate, whose area of expertise in the past is asthma and respiratory medicine, and he started a similar collaborative years ago and brought all of the asthma charities together and researchers and the MRC, and eventually working together in a collaboration, I understand that it transformed the way that asthma was treated and has made asthma much more prominent in the minds of doctors, researchers and politicians.
Okay.
So bearing that in mind, and the fact that he is very highly regarded, and that we belong to the collaborative, but we haven't given up our souls to the collaborative, we decided to join to see if we can further our cause, which of course is looking at biomedical research. And that is all that we will ever do. We will only ever fund biomedical research. It's all we're really interested in. If people want to belong to a collaborative who don't subscribe to that view, perhaps eventually their voices will be drowned out by those who are looking at the physical causes. I have to say that I attended the collaborative's first conference last month, and I would say more than 90% of the research that was presented was physical, biomedical, and very little research that was presented was of a psychological nature.
Right.
And I didn't hear anybody asking questions of those who were presenting psychological papers, which led me to believe that the vast majority of researchers in that space were not interested. They were interested in the physical, the biomedical research.
So that move to sort of drown out the
I think it spoke for itself.
Psychological. It's already started.
Yes,
yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the collaborative itself, it's an opportunity for researchers to share. It's not necessarily a sign that you support any particular researcher. Or,
no, and we have the option to walk away at any time if we want to, but we want to approach it more positively than that, and hope that this will be a way to get more researchers interested and more researchers asking us for money.
Okay, well, let's hope they do. Let's hope that some people have been inspired, because it's certainly been inspiring for me sitting here listening to you. That there are so many reasons to get involved in researching ME, into the biomedical research, and I wish that was within my skill set to do. So
we need more chips to get the word out there.
Well, we need more of you guys as well to really get the word out there, to help us to share the word. We need more Sues. We need more people who are just going to keep pressing to show everybody that this is something that can affect us all. It's affecting so many children in our schools, if it's affecting so many relatives of people with ME, and if it is something that pretty much anyone can get at any stage from a viral infection, then that's actually pretty damn scary. And I think it's absolutely vital that we have people researching this properly. The politicians, you could get it too. So, you wait and see if you trust in the spoken word when, you're waiting to see whether it cures you of what you've got.
So there you are, folks. That was our interview with Sue Waddle, the Vice Chair of ME Research UK and co-founder of Invest in ME. If you would like to find out how you could support ME Research UK further, either as a researcher or as a fundraiser, then please do follow the link to their website right here on this page. And don't forget, you can also support them by clicking my face to subscribe to the Graticast, completely free, and help us send some advertising revenue in the direction of them and other charities supporting biomedical research into ME. At the end of this interview, though, Sue did tell us that her daughter had selected a gratitune, that is, a piece of musical Prozac to raise the spirits. She had chosen Lean Marlene's Sitting Down Here. The lyrics of this song also speak about being invisible, and Sue's daughter had chosen this song because it can sometimes feel like that when you have ME. If you'd like to hear the full song, then please do click the link at the end of this video. So, a big thank you to Sue for joining us for this interview, and an even bigger thank you to you guys for watching, supporting, and asking all of your questions. Before I leave you though, one last thing. If you ever find that you're under the weather, well then, at least you're not going to run out of oxygen. Stay thankful, and ciao for now.